Isaiah Jackson's wrists bled from the tight handcuffs as Officer Brennan shouted for him to stop resisting. The airport terminal fell silent. Passengers recorded everything on phones. Isaiah tried speaking calmly. "My father is Attorney General Jackson. Call him now." Officer Brennan laughed dismissively. Before we dive into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you believe racial profiling needs to stop in America. Now let's get into how a respected civil rights attorney found himself bleeding in handcuffs and how it changed law enforcement across the country. Isaiah Jackson stepped off his flight from Chicago to Washington, D.C. with his navy blue suit wrinkled and tie loosened after the 3-hour delay. At 27, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had graduated at the top of his class from Harvard Law and secured a position at one of the capital's most prestigious civil rights firms. Despite being Attorney General Marcus Jackson's son, Isaiah had deliberately carved his own path, refusing special treatment or connections his father could have provided. The terminal buzzed with typical airport activity as Isaiah pulled his expensive leather carry-on behind him. He checked his watch, calculating how quickly he could get home after the legal conference that had kept him in Chicago for 3 days. The presentations on recent developments in civil rights legislation had energized him, giving him new strategies for his ongoing cases. He pulled out his phone to text his girlfriend Zoe that he had finally landed. "Just touched down. Flight from hell. Can't wait to see you later." Officer Richard Brennan stood near the security checkpoint, scanning the deplaning passengers with practiced eyes. At 42, the white TSA officer had spent 15 years scrutinizing travelers, developing what he called a sixth sense for trouble. His colleagues knew him for his high number of successful interventions, though complaints about his aggressive approach had been filed more than once. Brennan's attention locked onto Isaiah the moment he emerged from the jetway. Something about the young black man's designer luggage and casual confidence triggered Brennan's suspicion. He watched Isaiah move through the terminal, noting how people naturally gave him space, a sign of presence that Brennan misinterpreted as arrogance. Isaiah felt the officer's stare, but continued walking, having experienced this unwanted attention throughout his life. Even in his professional attire, he remained a target for extra scrutiny. He tightened his grip on his carry-on and kept his eyes forward, practicing the careful composure his father had taught him since childhood. "Sir, I need you to stop right there," Brennan called out, moving quickly to intercept Isaiah before he reached the exit. Isaiah halted, maintaining a neutral expression as the officer approached. "Is there a problem?" "You match the description of someone we're looking for," Brennan stated flatly. "I need to search your bag." Isaiah straightened his posture, his legal mind immediately assessing the situation. "Officer, I don't consent to a search without probable cause. May I ask what specific description I supposedly match?" Brennan's eyes narrowed at Isaiah's articulate response. "We received information about a drug courier on this flight. Professional-looking black male, expensive luggage. Now the bag, please." "With respect, Officer Brennan," Isaiah replied, glancing at the name tag, "that description is so vague it could match dozens of passengers. I'm a licensed attorney, returning from a legal conference, and I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure." The officer's face hardened at Isaiah's legal knowledge, perceiving it as a challenge to his authority rather than a legitimate exercise of rights. "Sir, you're in an airport. Different rules apply to security concerns. Last chance to cooperate voluntarily." By now, several travelers had slowed to observe the interaction. Isaiah remained composed but firm. "I understand airport security protocols, officer. However, they don't suspend constitutional protections. I'm happy to show you my Bar Association ID, but I don't consent to a search without proper cause." Brennan reached for his radio. "I need backup at Terminal C exit." He spoke into the device, eyes never leaving Isaiah. Potential security situation. Within moments, 2 additional officers approached rapidly from different directions. Passengers began to stop completely, now some pulling out phones to record the escalating situation. Isaiah found himself surrounded by 3 uniformed officers as a circle of onlookers formed around them. their faces displaying a mix of concern, curiosity, and judgment. "What's going on?" one of the new officers asked. "Subject matches a profile and is refusing search," Brennan replied tersely. Being combative. Isaiah took a deep breath, recognizing how quickly things were spiraling beyond his control. The weight of 100 similar stories pressed on his mind, encounters that had ended tragically for people who looked like him. Despite his legal knowledge and family connections, Isaiah suddenly felt the vulnerability of being a black man surrounded by armed officers who viewed him as a threat. "I'm not being combative," Officer Isaiah stated clearly, keeping his hands visible at his sides. "I'm asserting my constitutional rights. Here's my identification." He slowly reached for his wallet, extracting his bar association card along with his driver's license. Officer Brennan snatched the cards from Isaiah's hand, examining them with obvious skepticism. "Anyone can get fake IDs these days," he muttered, turning the cards over in his hand. The female officer who had arrived as backup studied Isaiah more carefully. Officer Kelly Martinez, a Latina in her mid-30s, had joined airport security 2 years ago after transferring from another district. She noticed Isaiah's composed demeanor and professional appearance, sensing something didn't align with Brennan's aggressive approach. "Sir, where are you coming from?" Martinez asked in a more measured tone. "Chicago. I was attending the National Civil Rights Law Conference at Northwestern University." "All my materials are in my bag," Isaiah explained, making eye contact with Martinez, hoping to find reason where Brennan offered none. "Convenient answer," Brennan interrupted. "Let's see those materials then." "I'd like to speak with a supervisor before proceeding," Isaiah requested, recognizing the situation was deteriorating despite his efforts to remain professional. "I believe this stop lacks reasonable suspicion and appears to be based solely on racial profiling." The mention of racial profiling visibly angered Brennan. His face flushed as he stepped closer to Isaiah. "No one's profiling you. You're being detained because of your behavior, not your race." By now, the crowd of onlookers had grown substantially. Business travelers, families, and airport employees formed a loose circle around the confrontation. Phones recorded from every angle, their small red recording lights dotting the periphery of Isaiah's vision like artificial stars. "What's happening to that man?" A child's voice pierced through the tension. "Hush, honey," a mother responded quietly. Isaiah felt a cold sweat break across his skin. Every fiber of his being wanted to argue, to educate, to challenge the injustice unfolding around him. Yet his father's voice echoed in his mind. "Sometimes survival means swallowing your pride. Come home safe, son. We'll fight the battle after you're secure." Officer Isaiah tried again, modulating his voice to remain calm. "I understand you're doing your job. I'm simply requesting proper procedure be followed. I'm happy to speak with a supervisor or airport police rather than TSA about any legitimate concerns." Brennan interpreted Isaiah's reasonable request as further defiance. "You don't dictate procedure here. Now I need to check your phone." When Isaiah reached toward his pocket for his phone, Brennan suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Isaiah's arm with bruising force. "Don't move." Instinctively, Isaiah pulled back from the painful grip. A natural human response, but one that gave Brennan the reaction he seemed to be seeking. "He's resisting," Brennan shouted, and immediately the other male officer moved in. Chaos erupted as Isaiah found himself forced to the ground. His cheek pressed against the cold terminal floor as Brennan twisted his arms behind his back. The weight of 2 men crushed against his lungs, making it difficult to breathe, let alone speak. His expensive watch scraped against the floor, the face cracking as his arms were roughly manipulated. "Stop resisting," Brennan kept repeating, though Isaiah had gone completely limp, knowing resistance would only escalate the situation. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into his wrists as Brennan cinched them brutally tight. The steel edges cut into Isaiah's skin, immediately drawing blood that began to trickle down his fingers onto the pristine airport floor. His carry-on toppled over during the struggle, spilling legal briefs, conference materials, and personal items across the terminal floor. Isaiah's phone skittered away, sliding to a stop near a bystander's foot. The entire terminal had gone silent, except for Brennan's continued commands and Isaiah's controlled breathing as he tried to manage the pain shooting through his shoulders and wrists. Officer Martinez stood slightly back, her face reflecting growing concern at the level of force being used against someone who posed no apparent threat. Isaiah's mind flashed back to the countless conversations with his father about precisely this scenario. The Attorney General had sat his son down when he was just 12 years old, explaining, "No matter who you become to some people, you'll always be just a black body first. Your credentials, your character, your contributions, they might not see any of that. Stay calm, stay alive, seek justice after." Those words had seemed abstract then. Now, with his face pressed against a public floor, they were his lifeline to rationality in a moment of profound injustice. The polished airport floor reflected Isaiah's distorted image back at him as he lay handcuffed and bleeding. Passengers circled the scene, their phones held high to capture every moment of his humiliation. Security personnel attempted to disperse the growing crowd, but travelers stood their ground, understanding they were witnessing something significant. "The handcuffs are too tight," Isaiah stated evenly, despite the sharp pain shooting through his wrists. "I'm bleeding and losing circulation in my hands." Officer Martinez glanced down at Isaiah's wrists, noticing the thin rivulets of crimson streaking his dark skin. She knelt beside him, reaching toward the cuffs. "Maybe we should loosen these a bit," she suggested. "Leave them," Brennan commanded sharply. "He'll be fine until we get him processed." Isaiah controlled his breathing, refusing to give Brennan the satisfaction of seeing him panic. "I need medical attention for my wrists, and I'd like to call my father, Attorney General Marcus Jackson." Brennan snorted derisively. "Yeah, right. And my dad's the president. You'll get your phone call after processing, just like everyone else." The words triggered a memory from Isaiah's childhood. He was 10, sitting in the back of his father's government car as they drove through Virginia. Blue lights flashed behind them. Despite his father's position, the officer approached with his hand on his weapon, demanding identification with unmasked contempt. His father had complied with meticulous politeness, never mentioning his title until another officer recognized him. Later, he had explained to Isaiah, "Power doesn't protect us in the moment, it helps us change the system afterward." Now, on the cold floor of Washington Dulles International Airport, Isaiah understood that lesson with painful clarity. Officer Brennan began rifling through Isaiah's scattered belongings, examining legal briefs and conference materials, without regard for privacy or procedure. Documents bearing the Harvard Law School emblem and Isaiah's name slid across the floor. "You need a warrant for that," Isaiah stated firmly, despite his compromised position. "Airport security exception," Brennan replied, smugly continuing his search. A woman stepped forward from the crowd of onlookers. Her expression reflected professional concern as she addressed the officers. "Excuse me, I'm Dr. Rachel Turner, a trauma surgeon at Georgetown University Hospital. That man is bleeding and appears to be in physical distress. He needs medical attention." Brennan turned toward her, irritation flashing across his face. "Ma'am, step back or you'll be interfering with security procedures." Dr. Turner held her ground. "I'm observing a medical emergency and offering assistance as required by my professional oath. Those handcuffs are cutting into his circulation." "Last warning," Brennan threatened. "Back away, or you'll be detained for interference." Isaiah watched this exchange from his prone position, noting Dr. Turner's determination. "Thank you, doctor," he called out. "I'd appreciate if you'd serve as a witness to what's happening. Officer Brennan, badge number 8742, has detained me without cause, applied excessive force, and is denying medical care. Officer Martinez, badge number 9651, is present. The time is 4:27 p.m. on Tuesday, August 17th. His methodical documentation seemed to unnerve Brennan, whose face reddened further. "Shut up with your lawyer talk." A man in a press security uniform with supervisor insignia pushed through the crowd. "What's the situation here?" he asked, surveying the scene with obvious concern. "Potential security threat, refusing compliance and resisting search," Brennan reported quickly. "Subject matches profile for drug trafficking." The supervisor, whose name badge read Franklin Wells, looked skeptically at Isaiah, lying calmly on the floor, blood now staining his shirt cuffs. "And the blood?" "Resisted handcuffing," Brennan replied flatly. Isaiah spoke up. "Sir, I'm Isaiah Jackson, an attorney with Calhoun and Associates. I was racially profiled, denied my constitutional rights, subjected to excessive force, and am being denied medical attention for injuries sustained during an unnecessary detention. I've requested to contact my father, Attorney General Marcus Jackson, multiple times." Wells's expression changed subtly at the mention of the Attorney General. "Did you verify his identity?" he asked Brennan. "Claims his ID is in his wallet, but anyone can fake credentials," Brennan dismissed. Wells knelt to examine the scattered contents on the floor, picking up a legal brief with Isaiah's name and the Attorney General's office letterhead. His expression grew increasingly troubled. On the floor nearby, Isaiah's phone lit up with an incoming call. The screen displayed Dad AG Office. Sir Wells addressed Isaiah with a markedly different tone. "We'll get this sorted out." "I've been requesting medical attention and a supervisor for 15 minutes, Isaiah replied, evenly maintaining his professional composure despite the circumstances. "Officer Brennan has violated multiple protocols and my constitutional rights. I'll need all security footage preserved and badge numbers of all officers involved." Dr. Turner spoke again. "As a medical professional, I'm formally requesting those handcuffs be loosened immediately. I can see tissue damage occurring." Wells nodded to Martinez. "Loosen the cuffs and help Mr. Jackson up. We're moving to a private security room to address this situation." "No," Brennan interjected. "We need to complete the search and processing procedure." Now, Officer Brennan Wells cut him off firmly. "And someone get medical attention for Mr. Jackson's wrists." As Isaiah was helped to his feet by Martinez, his phone continued ringing on the floor. The name Dad AG Office glowed accusingly in Brennan's direction. The private security room felt smaller than its actual dimensions as Isaiah sat with his bleeding wrists now loosely handcuffed in front of him. The sterile environment with its blank walls and single tables seemed designed to intimidate through isolation. A first aid kit lay open but unused on the table, as Officer Brennan insisted on completing security protocols before allowing medical attention. Isaiah's phone had been placed in a clear evidence bag, its screen periodically illuminating with incoming calls and messages. Each time Attorney General Jackson's name appeared, Brennan's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're making a serious mistake," Isaiah stated calmly, watching his blood slowly stain the metal table where his hands rested. "Continuing this detention after learning my identity compounds the legal issues you're already facing. How would you react if you were in Isaiah's position? Would you remain calm like him, or would you be more vocal about the injustice?" Comment number 1, if you believe staying calm in these situations is the right approach, or number 2, if you think righteous anger is justified when facing discrimination. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want to see more stories about racial injustice in America. What do you think will happen next when the Attorney General discovers what's happening to his son? Officer Martinez stood in the corner, seemingly uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before her. When Brennan turned to confer with Wells outside the door, she subtly took out her personal phone and snapped several photos of Isaiah's injuries before quickly pocketing the device again. "Why are you doing that?" Isaiah asked quietly. Martinez looked toward the door before responding in a hushed tone. "Because this isn't right. I've seen Brennan do this before, but never with someone who could actually fight back." The door opened as Brennan re-entered with Supervisor Wells trailing behind. "Let's start again," Brennan demanded, pulling a chair across from Isaiah. "What were you really doing in Chicago?" Isaiah maintained eye contact. "As I've stated multiple times, I was attending the National Civil Rights Law Conference at Northwestern University. My registration materials, presentation notes, and conference badge are all in my bag, which you searched without consent." Convenient cover story, Brennan pressed. And the calls from someone labeled AG Office are what your drug supplier using a government cover. Isaiah didn't take the bait. Those calls are from my father, Attorney General Marcus Jackson, who is likely concerned that I haven't responded to his messages after landing. You expect me to believe the Attorney General's son would be traveling alone without security, using public flights, Brennan scoffed. I expect you to perform basic identity verification before detaining and injuring a citizen, Isaiah replied evenly. And yes, I deliberately maintain independence from my father's position. I fly commercial, I built my own legal career, and I don't use his influence for special treatment. As Brennan continued his interrogation, Isaiah's mind drifted to similar experiences throughout his life. The private school administrator who accused him of cheating because his essay was too articulate. The campus security who demanded his ID while he studied on Harvard's lawn. The restaurant host who assumed he was staff rather than a dinner guest. Each incident had been another thread in a tapestry of assumptions, each reinforcing the reality that his achievements offered limited protection against bias. Outside the interrogation room, Dr. Turner had transformed from bystander to advocate. She methodically collected contact information from witnesses, creating a detailed record of the incident. I saw everything a businessman told her. That officer targeted him the moment he stepped off the plane. He was completely professional, while that officer was aggressive from the start, added an elderly woman. I've already sent the video to my daughter who works for the ACLU. In his office across town, Attorney General Marcus Jackson checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. Isaiah's flight had landed over an hour ago, and his typically responsive son hadn't answered multiple calls. The Attorney General's security detail had already confirmed the flight's arrival. Concern growing, Marcus accessed the tracking app Isaiah had reluctantly agreed to keep active on his phone after receiving threats related to his civil rights cases. The app showed Isaiah's phone at Dulles International Airport stationary for the past 45 minutes. Marcus dialed his son's number again, then placed a call to airport security when there was no answer. Back in the interrogation room, Officer Martinez watched Isaiah grow increasingly pale. The blood loss from his wrists was minor, but the combination of stress, dehydration from the flight, and the sustained adrenaline response was taking its toll. He needs medical attention now, Martinez stated firmly. This has gone on long enough. When we're finished, Brennan insisted, though his earlier confidence had begun to waver. Isaiah focused on his breathing, recognizing the lightheadedness as his body responded to stress. He had spent enough time with clients who experienced trauma to recognize the signs of shock beginning to manifest in his own body. Since you're so insistent about being an attorney, Brennan continued, explain why your luggage contains documents about police racial profiling cases. Seems suspicious for someone who claims to be just returning from a conference. Because racial profiling in law enforcement is literally my area of legal expertise, Isaiah replied, his voice slightly weaker, but no less precise. The irony of being profiled while carrying research on profiling would be amusing if it weren't so predictable. The door opened suddenly as Supervisor Wells returned, his face now ashen. He whispered something urgently into Brennan's ear. The officer's expression transformed instantly from smug certainty to visible panic as the color drained from his face. Get the cuffs off him, Wells ordered. Now. But the search protocol Brennan began weakly. Now Wells commanded, his voice cracking with stress. And get medical in here immediately. As Brennan fumbled with the handcuff keys, Wells turned to Isaiah with a completely different demeanor. Mr. Jackson, please accept our deepest apologies for this misunderstanding. We've just received confirmation of your identity, and... This wasn't a misunderstanding. Isaiah interrupted, his voice firm despite his weakened state. This was textbook racial profiling, followed by excessive force and deliberate indifference to medical needs. I'll need all officers' badge numbers, the preservation of all security footage, and witness statements before anything else happens. Brennan's hands shook slightly as he finally removed the bloodied handcuffs from Isaiah's wrists. The atmosphere in the security wing transformed as Attorney General Marcus Jackson strode through the doors flanked by 2 members of his security detail. At 56, the Attorney General carried the gravitas of his position with a careful balance of authority and restraint. His tailored suit and measured pace conveyed power without requiring him to raise his voice or make dramatic gestures. Officers and security personnel instinctively straightened their posture as he passed. Administrator Wells rushed forward to greet him, explanations and apologies tumbling out in a nervous stream that the Attorney General silenced with a single raised hand. "Where is my son?" he asked, his deep voice level but carrying an unmistakable edge. "This way, sir," Wells responded, leading him toward the room where Isaiah was now receiving medical attention. Inside, a paramedic was cleaning and bandaging Isaiah's lacerated wrists, while Officer Martinez stood nearby, Officer Brennan having been ordered to wait outside. When the Attorney General entered, the paramedic glanced up but continued working, recognizing the priority of medical care over protocol. Marcus Jackson's carefully maintained composure faltered momentarily when he saw his son's bloodied shirt cuffs and bandaged wrists. A flash of raw paternal anger crossed his face before his professional demeanor reasserted itself. "Isaiah," he said simply, the single word carrying the weight of 1,000 questions. Isaiah met his father's gaze steadily. "I'm okay, Dad, but I need you to step back and let me handle this officially. Not as your son, but as an attorney documenting civil rights violations." The Attorney General nodded once, understanding immediately. This wasn't a moment for paternal intervention, but for professional documentation of systemic abuse. By handling the situation through proper channels rather than using his influence to sweep it aside, Isaiah could transform a personal injustice into meaningful precedent. "I need medical assessment and documentation," Isaiah continued, addressing the room rather than just his father. "I need statements from all officers involved, taken separately before they can coordinate stories. I need all security footage preserved immediately, and I need statements from civilian witnesses." Administrator Wells began to suggest a private resolution, but Marcus Jackson cut him off. "My son has requested standard procedure for civil rights violation documentation," he stated flatly. "That's exactly what will happen. Nothing more, nothing less." Officer Brennan was summoned back into the room, his earlier arrogance replaced by thinly disguised panic. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. Airport security protocols sometimes require rapid assessment and—" "Save it for your formal statement," Isaiah interrupted, "which I expect will explain why you dismissed my identification, applied handcuffs tight enough to cause bleeding, denied medical attention, conducted a warrantless search, and mocked my truthful statements about my identity." Dr. Turner knocked on the door, frame her presence, adding another layer of independent verification. "I've collected contact information from 12 witnesses who observed the entire interaction," she explained. "As a medical professional, I've also documented Mr. Jackson's injuries with photographs and notes on the time frame during which care was denied." The Attorney General nodded appreciation to her. "Thank you, Doctor. Your intervention was commendable." "The least I could do," she replied. "Too many similar incidents go undocumented because witnesses don't step forward." Officer Martinez stepped forward, visibly nervous but determined. "Attorney General Jackson, I'd like to speak with you privately after this. There's relevant information about Officer Brennan's pattern of behavior that should be addressed." Brennan shot her a look of betrayal, but she maintained her resolve. The energy in the room shifted dramatically as airport officials and police representatives began arriving, alerted to the high-profile situation unfolding in their jurisdiction. The officials who hours earlier might have dismissed Isaiah's complaints now tripped over themselves to express concern and promise thorough investigation. Isaiah watched this performance with detached interest, noting how quickly power dynamics could reverse when privilege was revealed. The same officers who had seen him as a threat now recognized him as someone with the influence to affect their careers and department funding. "I need privacy to speak with my attorney," Isaiah stated, indicating his father. The room cleared quickly, leaving father and son alone for the first time since the incident began. "Are you really okay?" Marcus asked, his official mask dropping to reveal paternal concern. Physically, I'll be fine, Isaiah answered honestly. The rest will take longer to process. We can handle this quietly, Marcus offered. One call from me, and— No, Isaiah interrupted firmly. That's exactly what I don't want. If this gets resolved quietly because I'm your son, nothing changes for the thousands of people who don't have an attorney general for a father. Marcus studied his son's face, pride mixing with concern. You understand what you're taking on. The media circus, the potential backlash, the way some will try to discredit you. I've spent my entire career preparing for this moment, Isaiah replied, conviction strengthening his voice. Not to be the victim, but to be the advocate who has experienced the injustice firsthand. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Martinez entered cautiously, closing the door behind her. I have something you should see, she said, producing her phone. She showed them the photos she had surreptitiously taken of Isaiah's injuries, along with a folder from her bag. And these are copies of complaints filed against Officer Brennan over the past 3 years. 15 total, 13 from minority passengers, all dismissed as unsubstantiated despite similar patterns. Isaiah and his father exchanged glances, recognizing the significance of an officer breaking ranks to provide evidence. Why are you doing this? Isaiah asked. Because I became an officer to protect people, she answered simply. What happened today wasn't protection, it was prejudice. And it wasn't an isolated incident. Outside, the sound of camera shutters and raised voices indicated the media had already begun to arrive. News traveled fast when it involved the Attorney General and allegations of racial profiling. Isaiah took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders despite the pain in his wrists. Let's make this count, he said, both to his father and to himself. Not just for me, but for everyone who doesn't have cameras waiting to hear their story. The sterile hospital room contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding outside as Isaiah sat still for a more thorough medical examination. The doctor methodically documented each injury lacerations to both wrists, from over-tightened handcuffs, bruising along his shoulders and arms from the takedown, and abrasions on his cheek from contact with the terminal floor. Each injury was photographed with a measurement scale beside it, transformed from personal trauma to legal evidence. These cuts will heal within a week or two, the doctor explained, applying fresh bandages. But I'm noting potential nerve compression from the handcuffs. You may experience tingling or numbness in your fingers for some time. Isaiah nodded, watching as a nurse prepared a tetanus shot. The clinical assessment of his injuries created a strange disconnection, as though he were observing someone else's body rather than his own. He had represented dozens of clients with similar injuries, seen the photographs in case files, prepared them for testimony. Now, he occupied both roles, attorney and victim, simultaneously. They're asking if you're ready to sign the discharge papers, the nurse mentioned. And there are officers waiting to take your statement. I'm not signing anything yet, Isaiah replied firmly. And I'll provide my statement when my legal team arrives. Though he was himself an attorney, Isaiah understood the importance of having independent representation document this process. Self-representation in his own civil rights case would create complications he preferred to avoid. His father entered the room, closing the door softly behind him. The Attorney General had maintained a careful professional distance since they'd left the airport, allowing Isaiah to direct the response rather than overriding his agency with paternal intervention. Your colleagues from Calhoun and Associates are in the waiting area, Marcus informed him. Patricia Michaels and James Washington. They've already filed emergency preservation notices for all airport footage and communications. Isaiah nodded appreciation. Good. How's the situation outside? Escalating, Marcus replied honestly. Cell phone footage hit social media within minutes. Airport Authority held a preliminary press conference attempting damage control. Officer Brennan has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And Officer Martinez, giving a statement to Internal Affairs. Her documentation of previous complaints against Brennan has opened a larger investigation into pattern and practice issues at the airport. Isaiah leaned back against the hospital pillows, processing the rapid developments. They'll try to settle this quietly. Offer compensation, promise policy reviews, push for non-disclosure. Marcus studied his son's expression. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about our conversation when I was 16, Isaiah replied. "When I told you I wanted to become a civil rights attorney instead of following you into politics." Marcus nodded, remembering. "I told you both paths seek justice just through different means." "You also said something else," Isaiah continued. "The most privileged have the greatest responsibility to challenge injustice because they can survive the backlash." He gestured to his bandaged wrists. "I have privilege that protected me today. Officer Brennan couldn't make me disappear or worse because of who I am. That privilege means I have a responsibility to push this case as far as it can go." Outside the hospital room, Dr. Rachel Turner provided her statement to investigators, describing Isaiah's calm demeanor and Brennan's escalating aggression in precise medical terminology that would be difficult to dismiss. "The pattern of injuries indicates the handcuffs were applied with punitive rather than restraining intent," she explained. "The patient requested medical attention multiple times before receiving it, despite visible bleeding." Across town, Officer Martinez sat across from internal affairs investigators, her posture rigid with tension. Officer Brennan frequently expressed frustration about having to prove his suspicious activity reports when they involved certain demographics. She explained, choosing her words carefully. He referred to it as political correctness interfering with security instincts. "And you documented these instances?" the investigator asked. Martinez nodded. "I began keeping records after the third time I observed him targeting passengers who matched no reasonable security profile beyond race or apparent religion." As these investigations proceeded, Isaiah's phone lit up with a call from Zoe. He had texted her briefly from the hospital, but they hadn't spoken directly since the incident. "Isaiah, are you really okay?" Her voice carried the strain of someone who had been crying. "I saw the video. Everyone's sharing it. Your wrists were bleeding." "I'm okay," he assured her, realizing how inadequate the words were. "The doctors have checked everything. Minor injuries, nothing permanent." "I'm coming to the hospital," she stated firmly. "Actually, I'm being discharged soon. I'll meet you at home." "There's going to be a lot happening over the next few days, Zoe. Media legal proceedings, public statements." "I know," she replied. "And I'm with you through all of it." After disconnecting, Isaiah checked his social media notifications, which had exploded with messages of support, interview requests, and inevitably accusations that he was leveraging his father's position for attention. The double-edged sword of his family connection was already manifesting, both protecting him and providing ammunition for those who would discredit his experience. The hospital television played silently in the corner, showing footage from the airport with a news ticker announcing an upcoming press conference from the Attorney General's office. The reporter's lips moved silently as B-roll footage showed the airport terminal where Isaiah had been detained. "They're expecting a statement," Marcus noted, following Isaiah's gaze to the screen. "From both of us." "I'll speak for myself," Isaiah decided. "You should recuse yourself officially from any DOJ involvement. Make it clear this will be handled through proper channels without special treatment." Marcus nodded agreement. "Already done." "But Isaiah, understand that your actions now will have implications beyond this single incident. You're not just a victim seeking redress. You're an attorney setting precedent." "I know," Isaiah replied. "That's precisely why I won't accept a quick settlement with a non-disclosure agreement. This needs to be public, documented, and focused on systemic change, not just individual compensation." A knock at the door preceded the entrance of Isaiah's colleagues from Calhoun and Associates. Patricia Michaels, a veteran civil rights attorney with 20 years of experience, entered with James Washington, a brilliant young litigator who specialized in police misconduct cases. They carried laptops and legal folders, already preparing for the complex case ahead. "The initial evidence preservation orders have been filed," Patricia reported without preamble. We've also requested officer disciplinary records going back 5 years and TSA profiling complaint statistics for Dulles International. James added, social media footage has been downloaded and authenticated by our technical team. We've identified 14 distinct recording angles of the incident. Isaiah straightened in the hospital bed, his legal mind engaging despite physical discomfort. We need to move quickly on class certification. Officer Martinez indicated this is a pattern at this airport, not an isolated incident. As they discussed legal strategy, another notification appeared on Isaiah's phone. The leaked security footage had gone viral, spreading across platforms with millions of views in just hours. The clear visual evidence of a well-dressed black professional being aggressively detained, handcuffed until bleeding, and denied medical attention had struck a nerve in the ongoing national conversation about race and law. Enforcement. In his home across town, Officer Brennan watched the unfolding coverage with mounting horror. His confident assertion of authority had transformed into a career-threatening error that was now playing on screens nationwide. His phone rang constantly. Colleagues, union representatives, and disturbingly unknown numbers leaving threatening messages. The officer who had felt so powerful hours earlier now pulled his blinds shut, afraid of cameras or worse outside his home. This will blow over, the police union representative had assured him. These media frenzies always do. We'll get you transferred, maybe some additional training. But watching Isaiah Jackson's calm, articulate description of events being broadcast, Brennan felt the first real stirrings of doubt about his long-held instincts and the actions they had led him to take. The press conference room buzzed with anticipation as journalists and camera operators jostled for position. Network logos adorned microphones clustered at the podium while photographers adjusted settings to capture what had become the day's leading national story. Social media hashtags about the incident trended worldwide, the airport video having been viewed over 20 million times in less than 24 hours. Isaiah entered from a side door, his navy suit replaced with a fresh charcoal gray one that covered his bandaged wrists. He moved with deliberate composure to the podium, flanked by his legal team rather than his father. The Attorney General had made a brief statement earlier, officially recusing himself from any Department of Justice involvement in the case while expressing personal concern as a father. Now the stage belonged solely to Isaiah. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as he arranged his notes, the room falling silent with expectation. When he spoke, his voice carried the measured precision of someone who had argued before appellate courts, yet with an undertone of controlled emotion that conveyed authentic experience. Yesterday at Dulles International Airport, I was racially profiled, unlawfully detained, subjected to excessive force, and denied medical attention after being injured by an officer's actions. He began making eye contact with various journalists. As a civil rights attorney, I have represented clients who experienced similar treatment. As a black man in America, I have been prepared for such an encounter since childhood. What makes my case unusual is not what happened, but that I have the resources and platform to ensure it receives attention. Isaiah gestured to his legal team. Today I am announcing a formal civil rights lawsuit against the airport authority and the officers involved. However, this case is not merely about my experience. Evidence already gathered indicates a pattern of discriminatory practices affecting numerous travelers who match no legitimate security profile beyond their race, religion, or national origin. He paused, allowing the significance to register with the assembled press. Therefore, we are filing this as a class action on behalf of all similarly situated individuals who have been subjected to discriminatory treatment at this and other airports. We seek not only damages but mandatory injunctive relief in the form of comprehensive training, oversight, and accountability mechanisms. As questions erupted from the assembled journalists, Isaiah remembered his father's caution when he chose civil rights law over a more lucrative corporate career. He had been 16, passionate about justice but sheltered by privilege. This path means confronting people at their worst moments, Marcus had warned. Not just the victims seeking help, but the perpetrators defending injustice, the institutions resisting change, and the public preferring comfortable myths over uncomfortable truths. Isaiah had responded with teenage confidence. Then someone needs to make them uncomfortable. That youthful idealism had matured into professional commitment during his years at Harvard Law, where he had deliberately maintained distance from his father's influence. He had declined internship offers from prestigious firms to work instead with community legal aid services representing clients who couldn't afford representation. He had chosen Calhoun and Associates over positions that offered triple the salary because they took cases that created precedent rather than just settlements. Now answering questions with precise legal terminology, while cameras broadcast his words nationally, Isaiah walked the line between his professional training and personal experience. "Yes, I am the Attorney General's son," he acknowledged when the inevitable question came. "But this lawsuit proceeds exactly as it would if I were any other citizen whose rights were violated. The only difference is that I have a platform others don't. I intend to use that platform to create systemic change." Across town, Officer Martinez sat in her apartment reviewing her decision to break ranks. Her phone contained dozens of messages from fellow officers, some supportive, but others accusing her of betrayal. The police brotherhood valued loyalty above almost all else, and she had chosen justice instead. She knew her career would never be the same regardless of the case's outcome. When her doorbell rang, she approached cautiously, checking through the peephole before opening. A woman in a suit stood in the hallway holding credentials. "Officer Martinez, I'm Patricia Michaels from Calhoun and Associates. We're representing Isaiah Jackson. May I speak with you?" Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the airport, authority executives and attorneys huddled in emergency sessions reviewing liability exposure and potential settlement figures. "We need to get ahead of this," the chief legal officer insisted. "Offer a substantial settlement with non-disclosure before this expands." "Jackson won't take it," argued another attorney who had watched the press conference. "He's clearly positioning this as a reform case, not a compensation case." "Everyone has a price," the CEO stated flatly. "Find his." As these various responses unfolded, Isaiah's inbox filled with messages from other travelers describing similar experiences at airports across the country. One email particularly caught his attention. From a group of civil rights organizations proposing coordination on a nationwide initiative addressing transportation security profiling. That evening, Isaiah finally returned to his apartment where Zoe waited with dinner prepared and the news muted on the television. The screen showed Isaiah's press conference footage as he closed the door behind him. "You've been running non-stop since the hospital," she observed, helping him remove his jacket carefully over the bandages. "How are you really doing?" The question penetrated the professional armor he had maintained throughout the day. For the first time since the incident in the privacy of his home with someone he trusted completely, Isaiah allowed himself to acknowledge the full impact. "I keep thinking about how easily it could have escalated," he admitted quietly. "If I'd moved wrong, if I'd lost my temper, if there hadn't been witnesses recording everything." Zoe embraced him gently, mindful of his injuries. "But it didn't. And now you're doing exactly what you've trained for." "The media attention is already intense," he continued, "and it's only going to increase. Are you ready for that? For strangers recognizing you as Isaiah Jackson's girlfriend and asking for comments?" "I'm with you," she replied simply. "Whatever comes." His phone rang again, the fifth call in an hour from another national news program requesting an interview. Isaiah silenced it, prioritizing this moment of human connection over the case that would soon dominate his professional and personal life. Outside his building, unbeknownst to them, a news van had already parked a reporter preparing for a live remote for the evening broadcast. The wheels of media and justice system both were turning at full speed, transforming a single moment of profiling into a national inflection point. The federal courthouse buzzed with activity as the preliminary hearing for Jackson versus Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority commenced. Security measures had been enhanced to accommodate the media presence and protesters who gathered outside, some supporting Isaiah's case and others defending law enforcement against what they termed political persecution. Inside the courtroom, Isaiah sat at the plaintiff's table alongside his legal team, his bandages now removed but the marks on his wrists still visible. The formal setting, with its polished wood and judicial authority, transformed what had been a personal humiliation into a matter of legal record and potential precedent. The airport authority's legal team, composed of 6 attorneys from a prestigious law firm, occupied the defense table. Their strategy had become clear through pre-hearing filings. They would acknowledge Officer Brennan's procedural errors while denying any pattern of discrimination, offering Isaiah a substantial settlement while contesting class certification. Judge Eleanor Harrington, known for her meticulous approach to civil rights cases, entered and court proceedings began. At 62, she had built a reputation for fairness and thorough examination of evidence, neither automatically sympathetic to plaintiffs nor deferential to institutions. This hearing will address 2 preliminary matters she began after formalities concluded: the plaintiff's motion for class certification and the defense motion to dismiss certain claims. We'll begin with opening statements. Patricia Michaels rose for the plaintiff's side. Your Honor, this case presents clear evidence not only of constitutional violations against Mr. Jackson, but of a systematic pattern of discriminatory security practices at Dulles International Airport. Through discovery, we've identified 47 complaints filed against Officer Brennan alone over a 3-year period, of which 42 involved travelers of color. None resulted in disciplinary action. The defense countered with arguments about heightened security requirements in airports and the need for officer discretion. Their presentation was polished but predictable, focusing on technical jurisdiction arguments rather than addressing the underlying allegations. As the hearing progressed to evidence presentation, Isaiah found himself once again revisiting the moment of his detention. The court viewed airport security footage, showing the entire encounter from multiple angles. Seeing himself forced to the ground, handcuffed until bleeding, created a surreal disconnection, like watching something happen to someone else while simultaneously feeling phantom pain in his wrists. Officer Brennan's personnel file had been obtained through discovery, revealing a history of complaints that had been systematically dismissed or minimized. His performance evaluations praised his proactive security approach and high number of interdictions without addressing the racial disparity in his enforcement actions. When Officer Martinez took the stand, the courthouse fell completely silent. Her decision to testify against a fellow officer had made her a pariah among many colleagues, but a hero to others. She spoke clearly about the patterns she had observed. There was an understanding among certain officers about which passengers to scrutinize more closely, she explained. Middle Eastern men, particularly with beards. Black men in either very casual or very expensive clothing. Latino families with multiple bags. These profiles were not based on behavior, but on appearance. During cross-examination, the defense attorney attempted to undermine her credibility. Officer Martinez, isn't it true you were passed over for promotion twice before this incident? Yes, she acknowledged. And might that explain your willingness to turn against your colleagues? Martinez leaned forward. I turned against injustice, not colleagues. I became an officer to protect people, not profile them. When Officer Brennan took the stand, his earlier arrogance had been replaced with careful coaching from defense attorneys. He expressed regret for the misunderstanding while maintaining he had acted on legitimate security concerns rather than racial bias. Mr. Jackson's behavior raised several red flags consistent with our training, Brennan testified. His reluctance to comply with security protocols, his reaching movements, his claiming connections to high-level government officials, these are all indicators we're trained to note. Isaiah watched him closely, recognizing the careful linguistic construction, focusing on alleged behaviors rather than acknowledging the initial profiling that precipitated the encounter. It was a strategy he had seen countless times in defending civil rights cases, reframing discrimination as reasonable response to perceived threat. When Isaiah's turn came to testify, he drew on both his professional training and personal experience. He methodically recounted each moment of the detention, connecting Officer Brennan's actions to specific violations of policy and constitutional protections. His testimony focused not on emotion, but on establishing the objective elements required for class certification. What makes this case suitable for class treatment is not the specifics of my detention, but the systematic nature of the profiling that led to it, he explained. The data obtained through discovery demonstrates a clear pattern affecting numerous travelers who share protected characteristics. From the gallery, Attorney General Marcus Jackson watched with professional detachment and paternal pride. He had maintained careful separation from the case, assigning a special counsel to oversee any Department of Justice involvement. Still, his presence communicated the significance of the proceedings. During a recess, the airport authority's lead counsel approached Isaiah with another settlement offer, triple the amount previously proposed with non-disclosure terms slightly relaxed. We're prepared to acknowledge procedural failures and implement additional training, the attorney offered. This could be resolved today with guaranteed changes rather than years of uncertain litigation. Isaiah studied the offer document briefly before responding. This addresses my individual case, but not the systematic issues. It promises training, but no meaningful oversight or accountability. The 47 other complainants would receive minimal compensation without structural reform. That's our final offer, the attorney stated flatly. Then we'll see this through to verdict, Isaiah replied, handing back the document. When proceedings resumed, Judge Harrington announced she would allow limited cross-examination of Isaiah by the defense. The airport's attorney approached the stand with calculated cordiality. Mr. Jackson, you've built an impressive career as a civil rights attorney. Would you say this case has increased your professional profile? Isaiah recognized the implication immediately, that he was leveraging the incident for personal gain. My professional reputation was established before this incident. What this case has increased is my first-hand understanding of what my clients experience. And would you have pursued this case with equal vigor if you weren't the Attorney General's son, if you didn't have media attention and resources at your disposal? Isaiah leaned forward. I pursued cases with equal vigor before becoming a plaintiff myself. The question isn't why I have the resources to fight this injustice. It's why so many others don't. The cross-examination continued, attempting to reframe Isaiah's resistance to the search as the cause of escalation rather than Brennan's initial profiling. Throughout, Isaiah maintained his composure, recognizing the tactics from his own litigation experience. As the hearing neared conclusion, Judge Harrington asked both sides for final statements on the class certification motion. Your Honor, Isaiah's attorney argued the evidence demonstrates a clear pattern affecting a definable class of individuals based on protected characteristics. The statistical disparity in Officer Brennan's enforcement actions alone establishes the commonality required for certification. The defense countered that each security interaction was unique, making class treatment inappropriate. Airport security necessarily involves officer discretion. Bad outcomes in individual cases don't establish systematic discrimination. Judge Harrington considered both arguments before delivering her ruling. Having reviewed the evidence presented, I find the plaintiffs have established sufficient commonality and typicality to proceed with conditional class certification. The statistical evidence suggests a pattern that warrants further examination. She continued, additionally, I'm ordering the scope of discovery expanded to include all passenger complaints across the entire airport authority for the past 5 years, categorized by demographic data when available. The ruling represented a significant procedural victory, allowing the case to proceed as a class action and dramatically expanding its potential impact. As court adjourned, journalists rushed to file their stories, framing the ruling as either judicial overreach or necessary accountability depending on their audience. Outside the courthouse, Isaiah faced a wall of cameras and microphones. Despite exhaustion from the day's proceedings, he recognized the importance of shaping the narrative. Today's ruling acknowledges what many travelers have long experienced. that profiling based on race, religion, or national origin remains a reality in our transportation systems. This case isn't about one officer or one incident, but about ensuring equal protection under law for everyone passing through our airports. As he spoke, his phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Officer Brennan requesting a private meeting away from attorneys and media. Isaiah paused mid-sentence, surprised by the unexpected outreach from the officer at the center of the case. The litigation had entered a new phase, one that would test not only the legal boundaries of airport security practices, but also Isaiah's personal balance between seeking justice and enabling redemption. 6 months after the preliminary hearing, Isaiah stood before a different audience, a class of police academy cadets attending a specialized training session on constitutional rights and implicit bias. The courtroom battles had given way to educational initiatives, though legal proceedings continued on multiple fronts. The Constitution doesn't become suspended in airports or security checkpoints, Isaiah explained to the attentive cadets. Your authority derives from law, and the law applies equally to everyone, regardless of appearance, accent, or origin. The training session represented one tangible outcome from a landmark settlement reached 3 months earlier. After Judge Harrington's expansion of discovery revealed systematic disparities in security interventions across the entire airport authority, the defendants had returned to the negotiating table with a fundamentally different approach. The final settlement included not only substantial damages for Isaiah and other class members, but mandatory reforms to training, oversight, and accountability mechanisms. Most significantly, it established an independent review board with authority to evaluate complaints and recommend disciplinary action. Isaiah had directed most of his personal settlement toward establishing the Equal Security Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing legal representation to travelers experiencing discriminatory security practices. The foundation had already taken on 23 cases nationwide, creating a network of attorneys specialized in transportation security, civil rights issues. After concluding his presentation to the cadets, Isaiah checked his watch. He had one more appointment before returning to his office, a quarterly meeting with former Officer Richard Brennan. Their first meeting, requested by Brennan during the height of litigation, had been tense and uncertain. Isaiah had agreed to meet without attorneys present, recognizing that legal proceedings alone couldn't address the human dimensions of what had occurred. Brennan, fired from airport security and unable to secure similar employment, had arrived defensive, but ultimately broken down, revealing the complex interplay of training, culture, and personal bias that had shaped his actions. I was taught to trust my instincts, he had explained during that first difficult conversation. Every successful intervention reinforced the profile. When you stopped hundreds of people who matched certain characteristics and occasionally found something suspicious, it validated the approach. The 99 innocent people became invisible, just necessary collateral in protecting against the one potential threat. Isaiah had listened without offering easy absolution or expressing vindictive satisfaction. Over subsequent months, their unusual relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Brennan had enrolled in implicit bias training programs and begun speaking to community groups about his transformation, while Isaiah had incorporated Brennan's insights into training materials for security personnel. Today, they met at a small coffee shop away from media attention. Brennan had aged visibly in the months since the incident, stress etching new lines around his eyes. But there was also a different quality to his presence, a reflective awareness that had replaced his former rigid certainty. The program's expanding to 3 more cities next month, Brennan reported, referring to the community dialogue initiative he now facilitated. People actually listen when I speak about bias, because I'm not coming from an academic perspective. I lived it, enforced it, and now recognize it. Isaiah nodded. The cadets today were especially engaged during the case study portion. Seeing concrete examples, rather than abstract principles, makes the constitutional issues real. Their conversation continued, focusing on practical applications rather than philosophical reconciliation. Neither man pretended their relationship was friendship, but both recognized its unique value in advancing the changes both now sought. After parting ways with Brennan, Isaiah headed to the airport, the same one where he had been detained a year earlier. The experience of passing through security had transformed dramatically, not just for him but for all travelers. Officers now wore body cameras with automatic activation protocols. Clear signage informed passengers of their rights and complaint procedures. Most significantly, the confrontational security culture had been replaced with a more professional, consistent approach. Officer Kelly Martinez, now promoted to training officer after testifying against Brennan, noticed Isaiah passing through and nodded respectfully. Her career trajectory had initially suffered after breaking the blue wall of silence, but the subsequent investigations had ultimately vindicated her actions. She now led the implementation of new protocols designed to maintain security while respecting constitutional protections. As Isaiah cleared security without incident, he checked his phone to find a message from his father. The Attorney General had maintained professional distance throughout the legal proceedings, but their personal relationship had deepened through the shared experience. His message was simple: cabinet meeting finished. Legal reforms package approved for legislative proposal. Your foundation's data was instrumental. Isaiah smiled slightly, recognizing how his personal trauma had catalyzed changes, extending far beyond his individual case. The airport incident had become a case study in law enforcement training nationwide, with the resulting reforms affecting thousands of daily interactions between security personnel and travelers. Boarding his flight, Isaiah noticed a young officer observing passengers with careful attention. Unlike the profiling he had experienced, this officer's watchfulness appeared focused on behaviors rather than appearances, on specific actions rather than demographic assumptions. When the officer noticed Isaiah, recognition flickered across his face. He approached professionally, maintaining appropriate distance. "Mr. Jackson, I wanted to say thank you," the officer said quietly. "Your case changed how we're trained. I went through the new program, and it makes us better officers." Isaiah nodded acknowledgement. That was always the goal. Security and constitutional rights can coexist. They should, the officer agreed, before returning to his duties. Finding his seat on the plane, Isaiah sent a text to his father before switching to airplane mode. Same airport, different world. We're getting there. The transformation wasn't complete. Systemic change never happened overnight. Some officers resisted the new procedures. Some administrators complied minimally, and some travelers still experienced discriminatory treatment. But the framework for accountability now existed, where previously there had been only unchecked discretion. As the plane took off, Isaiah gazed out the window at the sprawling airport below, reflecting on how a moment of injustice had become a mechanism for change. His wrists bore faint scars from the handcuffs, a permanent reminder of both vulnerability and strength, of the personal cost of confronting systemic failure, and of the possibility that even deeply entrenched practices could evolve when, challenged with sufficient evidence, persistence, and moral clarity. Isaiah Jackson's journey teaches us that real change requires both personal courage and systemic action. When confronted with injustice, he didn't just seek individual compensation, but leveraged his unique position to create lasting reform. His case demonstrates how racial profiling continues in modern America, despite laws prohibiting discrimination. The story highlights several crucial lessons. First, knowing your rights is essential, but doesn't guarantee protection. Second, documentation and witnesses can transform personal trauma into powerful evidence. Third, institutions resist change until faced with irrefutable proof of wrongdoing. Fourth, true justice involves not just punishment, but transformation of broken systems. Perhaps most importantly, Isaiah's experience reveals how privilege operates. His connections as the Attorney General's son didn't prevent his mistreatment, but they provided resources to fight back that many victims lack. The responsibility of the privileged isn't just to avoid discrimination, but to actively dismantle it for everyone. The partnership between Isaiah and Officer Martinez shows that change requires allies within the system willing to risk their positions for justice. Their courage reminds us that ending discrimination demands action from both those who experience it and those who witness it. Have you ever witnessed racial profiling in public spaces? What would you have done if you were a bystander during Isaiah's detention? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about overcoming injustice resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful content exposing discrimination in America. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the reality of racial bias in our systems. Thank you for listening, and remember that your voice matters in the ongoing struggle for equality. Together we can create a world where no one fears being targeted because of their appearance.